An age of disclosure on aliens from the White House appearing imminent. President Trump giving the green light for government files on extraterrestrial life to be released to the public and soon. Take a listen.
Well, I think we're going to be releasing as much as we can in the near future. For some reason, and I guess it's just a reason that's been in the minds of people for a long time, that is such, they want to find out about the UFOs and anything having to do with UFO or related material, and we're going to be releasing a lot of things that we have, and I think some of it's going to be very interesting.
It was back in February that the president first made the order to the Department of War and other government agencies to release these UFO documents. So can we really expect this information soon? And what will those files contain? For more, we're welcoming in Ross Coulthart, NewsNation special correspondent, investigative journalist. Of course, he's the host of Reality Check as well. Ross, always wonderful to see you. And what do you think about this? Do you feel the release of the files is imminent? And what are you hoping we will see?
Well, firstly, good evening, Natasha. As best we know at this stage, officially, there hasn't actually been an executive order made by the president yet relating to the transparency on these UAP files. He's made a promise on Truth Social. At the moment, we've had no official acknowledgement from the White House that that's been formalized by an executive order. But I'm heartened by the fact that certain representatives have admitted in recent weeks that there have been classified briefings on UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, given to very senior members of the House, including the House Majority Leader, Steve Scalise, as well as Representatives Eric Burlison, Anna Paulina Luna, Eric Burchett. These briefings are happening in secret. They're happening in skiffs, secure rooms where the secrets obviously won't be leaked. But of course, as a lot of people are saying, if it has to be classified, why are UAPs supposedly fictional? There's obviously something going on. The White House is contemplating the release of something. I do think we're entitled to be skeptical that we're going to see the whole banana, though.
Yeah, tell me more about that. What do you read into these, sort of private classified briefings that are happening right now? And then more broadly, I mean, is there a difference between some files being released but them being heavily redacted? I mean, what do we really need to see?
Well, it's interesting. There's been admissions made, in particular by Representative Tim Burchett, who has acknowledged that what he was given in a classified briefing was deeply disturbing, and that if Americans heard about this, it would upset their worldview. I have not heard directly from Tim Burchett the details about what he was briefed, but I've spoken to other representatives and staffers who've told me that they've been briefed similarly, quote, distressing material. We can only speculate about this at the moment because, frankly, nobody's speaking on the record. It would be a breach of their security oaths, their undertakings to the people who are briefing them from the intelligence community to release details. But, frankly, I think we're at a really interesting point in history now here, Natasha. We still have the official position of the Pentagon that UAPs are not coming to this planet. They're not engaging with planet Earth, and now we know differently. It's being made very clear in classified briefings something is going on. Are we going to be told about it?
Fascinating. And I know you'll keep tracking that. Separately, I know so many viewers have been asking you about the several missing and dead scientists that we've been tracking as well in the U.S. Some of them do have connections with UFO research. I'd like to listen to some of what the president had to say about this topic, and let's get your reaction on the other side.
No, some of them that we looked at are very sad cases in some cases. Some were sick. Some left this earth self-inflicted. Some had other things. So far, there's not a major, sometimes there's a little bit of a connection anyway, and you say, oh, this is a terrible thing. But so far, we're finding that there's not much of a connection. We'll let you know. We're going to be doing a full report. It was very serious.
He says not much of a connection. What are your thoughts as you've looked into this?
Okay, my concern is that a lot of tabloid media have been suggesting that there is a connection between all 12 to 15 individuals who've either died or gone missing. I don't think there is a connection, frankly, and I don't think we need to speculate about such conspiracy ideas. There's enough in what we know publicly. The disappearance of Major General Neil McCaslin, in and of itself, on February the 27th, is a grave cause for concern. The case of Amy Eskridge, a Huntsville scientist who allegedly suicided, but in highly suspicious circumstances that frankly did warrant further investigation. And as has been made public more recently, a person by the name of Matt Sullivan, who was a very senior intelligence official with the US Air Force, who was going to come forward to Congress, who'd already been in touch with congressional committees and was on the point of giving evidence. Matt literally died shortly before he was due to give evidence. And a lot of people, myself included, have very grave concerns about the stated cause of death, which was suicide.
Okay, and Ross, one more question for you. You mentioned Congresswoman Paulina Luna earlier. She did post something on X saying that there will be a congressional hearing in less than 2 weeks on MKUltra, of course, the CIA's top secret mind control research program that ran during the Cold War. What do you anticipate will be coming out of this? What are your thoughts?
MKUltra, Natasha, as you would know, is one of the great dirty secrets of the CIA. From 53 to 73, the CIA tried what was called mind control experiments. They went crazy trying to find ways of manipulating human beings against their will. And that included, horrifically, the use of, for example, LSD, hallucinogenic drugs being given to unwitting innocent civilians in America by the CIA in circumstances that were highly controversial, including in circumstances where people died. The concerns that I think Paulina Luna has is that this is part of the tip of an iceberg about the broad secrecy imposed by the CIA and the intelligence community. And she's all about basically getting to the truth of, are things being concealed to this day, not just about MKUltra, but about the whole UAP issue, because it is beginning to look like there has been a cover-up, and we may, in coming weeks, get official confirmation of that from President Trump.
All right, Ross Coulthart, always fascinating to speak with you. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Pleasure.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.